All right. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to our Friday Digest series, and welcome to the first Friday Digest of 2025. So happy New Year to everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. I am Jason All, Director of Strategic Communications for Maryland LCV. And as always, your presence here speaks to the power of our community and to your commitment to the environmental causes that affect all of us. Our goal with these Friday Digests is to provide you with the information, tools, and resources to be an informed and active advocate. We also want the agenda for these virtual meetings to be driven by your interests and your needs. So please let us know what you want to hear. And the easiest way to do that is to fill out the survey that you will receive at the end of the session. As you join today, please type your questions into the Q&A chat box as you receive them, or as you as you have them, and we will get to them later today at the end of the conversation. Today, we'll be discussing Maryland LCV's legislative priorities for the 2025 session. While Maryland faces unprecedented economic challenges, including a projected $3 billion budget deficit, we have developed a thoughtful and strategic agenda that balances fiscal responsibility with essential environmental protections. I'm joined today by two key members of our policy team. First, Kristen Harbison, our political director, will provide an overview of our legislative agenda and discuss how we're approaching this challenging budget environment. Rebecca Rear, our director of climate policy and justice, will dive deeper into two of our priority bills, the Abundant, Affordable, Clean Energy Act and the CHERISH Our Communities Act. We do have quite a lot to share with you today and only a short time to do it. So with that, I am very pleased to welcome our political director, Kristen Harbison, who will speak more about the legislative session and what we can expect. Kristen, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Jason, and welcome everybody. It's always so exciting. The beginning of the legislative session is my favorite time of year. I'm always so excited to start the new legislative session and to get to work with everybody to pass a really good, strong environmental legislation for clean air, healthy water, and a resilient community for everyone in Maryland. This year does promise to be a challenging one. Jason mentioned the budget reality and the nearly $3 billion budget deficit. Maryland has a constitutional mandate. They must pass a balanced budget, which means that the General Assembly is going to be making some really tough choices this year. And our job is to make sure that they continue to move the ball forward in passing strong environmental goals and meeting our climate goals. That is our job. And that's what we'll be spending the next 87 and a half days working on, and with your help. It does mean, the budget means, challenges do mean though that all of our bills will be facing additional scrutiny. And so we've been looking at creating priorities with an eye to responsibly considering the challenges of the state budget. And so I'll just touch briefly through our four key legislative issues, legislative priorities, and then talk a little bit more in depth about two of them, and then pass it over to Rebecca to follow up with the other two. And really looking forward to, again, to working to all of you. None of these bills will pass without your help. Especially in a challenging budget year, we will need everybody's support to make progress and to make sure the legislators prioritize our issues as they're making tough choices. So the first bill that we have four policy priorities this year. The Coal Cleanup and Asthma Mitigation Fund is sponsored by Delegate Dana Stein and Senator Jim Rosapep, and creates a dedicated revenue stream while cleaning up pollution in communities impacted by coal dust pollution. The Nearshore Farm and Finance Act, sponsored by Delegate Dana Stein again, and Senator Sarah Love, who is recently a senator after being a delegate for a number of years, uses existing programs more effectively to help clean our waterways and create more resilient community coastlines. I'll be talking about those two and then turn over to Rebecca to discuss the other two, the Cherish Our Communities Act, which is sponsored by Delegate Jazz Lewis and Senator Clarence Lamb. This is a cumulative impacts bill, an environmental justice initiative that improves existing permitting processes and including robust community engagement. The Abundant, Affordable, Clean Energy Act, otherwise known as AACE, is sponsored by Delegate Laura Charkoudian and Senator Ben Brooks, two longtime champions of the environment that we've worked with, and we're excited to get to work with again. This is meant to incentivize the creation of more in-state renewable energy to address our current and future energy needs. So I'll talk about the first two and then turn it over to Rebecca. So the Coal Cleanup and Asthma Mitigation Fund does what the title says it's supposed to do. It is coal dust cleanup, and it helps address asthma mitigation. This is really a reintroduction of a bill that we worked on last year that we talked about, the fossil fuel transport fee bill. We took the concerns and questions raised last year and refined and revised the legislation. This idea is based on an existing fee on oil that travels through the state. There's already an oil transport fee bill. That fee is meant to provide funding for any future oil spills. This bill does the same thing on coal. It charges $13 per short ton, and a short ton is that 2,000 pound measurement that we all think of as a ton, as opposed to a metric ton or a long ton, which are slightly different. But it's so $13 per short ton for all coal coming into the state, mostly from West Virginia and Pennsylvania, and most of which is exported out of the Port of Baltimore. 40% of the money from that fund is directed towards overburdened and underserved communities impacted by coal dust pollution along the coal routes. Additionally, $5 million a year is dedicated specifically to asthma mitigation efforts in those same communities. The fee is anticipated to raise as much as $300 million a year, which could also go to support other climate programs. And one of the things about the difference between the coal fee and the oil cleanup fee is, while the oil fund is anticipating a potential future oil spill, that is possibility. It's not a guarantee. The coal dust pollution is a guarantee. Right now, the way coal is transported, it does share coal dust. It does spread coal dust to the communities along the coal routes. And so we need to be active in right now helping to support the existing coal pollution that comes from the transportation of coal through the state. So that's very exciting. Again, that's a reintroduction from a bill that we worked on last year. And we're very excited to get to work with Delegate Stein and Senator Rosapep on that. The second is the Nearshore Farm and Finance Act. And this is really the big water bill for us this year. And last year, if you'll remember, we worked on the Whole Watershed Act. This is really sort of the next step in the Bay cleanup. It's currently, farmers are allowed to apply nutrients as part of their agricultural practices up to 10 feet from the shoreline. And in some cases, that buffer is up to 35 feet. Under this bill, farmers may still operate up to that 10 feet and 10 feet from the shoreline, but they can't apply nutrients less than 100 feet from the shoreline. So it increases the buffer between the water and where nutrients are applied. This is a comparatively small amount of land, but it is a huge impact on the pollution that goes into the bay. Now, this is a problem. This is taking a fair amount of land away from the farmer. This is taking some land away from the farmers, but in return from although they can still farm in that space, they just can't apply nutrients. But in compensation for that, this bill creates financial incentives for farmers to practice good conservation processes, planting cover crops, grass, shrubs, any permanent filter processes, fixed filter practices to actively support watershed restoration efforts in that buffer zone. And they get paid to help do that. They get even more money if they plant trees, which are really good to help protect and create resilient coastline. So we're very excited to work with our partners, especially the Waterkeepers, Shore Rivers, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, to pass that bill. So that's what I've got on those first two bills. Happy to answer any questions, but again, really appreciate everybody's participation. Can't wait to work with you all to pass all of these bills because we can't do it without you. And with that, I will turn it over to my good friend and colleague, Rebecca Rear, to talk about the other two bills.
Thanks so much, Kristen, and thanks everyone for being here. Excited to already see questions in the chat. I will note we're providing an overview of our priority bills today, but you can expect through our Friday Digest series throughout the legislative session to get a deeper dive on each of these, plus so much more. So we're hoping to give you this overview today. And then we'll be able to do deeper dives on each of these in future webinars and communications and action alerts and opportunities for you all to engage directly on these. So just wanted to make sure we're going to cover this scope and this overview. We're about 3 days, 2.5 days into the legislative session now. And so we're hoping that this overview provides a really good sense of what to expect and where some of the conversations are going. And then we'll dig in on these throughout the session and the many more that will be introduced. So yeah, just wanted to give that little preamble as I see some questions coming in the chat and keep them coming. But I'm Rebecca Rear. I'm the Director of Climate Policy and Justice here at Maryland LCV. Really excited to be with you today and my wonderful colleagues here online. And I'm going to cover the other two of our priority bills, the Abundant, Affordable, Clean Energy Act, or the AACE Act. And just a little background, we're expecting an increase in electricity demand over the next several years. We had a reasonable rise anticipated because of beneficial electrification of our buildings and cars, but with the explosion of the high energy use hyperscale data center industry and some other high energy use industries, we've seen those projections now skyrocket, while at the same time, current energy markets don't adequately protect ratepayers from rising costs. Maryland needs more in-state clean power generation to ensure reliability and affordability, and electricity use accounts for more than a fifth of Maryland's emissions. So the AACE Act seeks to generate more clean energy in the state of Maryland on the way to 100% clean energy while keeping energy bills affordable and the grid reliable in a way that meets this growing demand. The AACE Act is sponsored by Delegate Lori Charkoudian in the House and Senator Ben Brooks in the Senate. What does it do? It creates a market for battery storage projects that we anticipate coming out of the PJM. So it's in line for project approvals from our grid PJM. We expect there are a lot of battery projects in the queue, and we want to create the market for those battery projects so that when they get out of the queue, we can get them built right away. So it has an expedited process for that. It changes the way we finance solar projects to respond to different sector needs and spur development. It specifically directs transmission for offshore wind to address Maryland load. It supports the relicensing of existing non-carbon emitting energy production in the state at Calvert Cliffs Nuclear Facility. And it introduces new ratepayer protections using funds from the Renewable Portfolio Standards Alternative Compliance Payments, or ACPs, and the state energy use and franchise tax generated from data centers. So it takes 75% of that tax revenue and puts it in an escrow account that gets redistributed to ratepayers to protect against these increasing costs. So that's the AACE Act. It also has several labor and supplier diversity provisions in the bill. But that's how the AACE Act seeks to focus clean energy generation in the state of Maryland and add reliability to our grid while addressing resource adequacy needs. The second bill I'm going to cover is the CHERISH Act. So I get two fun acronym bills this year. The CHERISH Our Communities Act, or CHERISH stands for From Cumulative Harms to Environmental Restoration for Improving Our Shared Health. So that's CHERISH. And the CHERISH Our Communities Act addresses a critical gap in Maryland's environmental protection system. Even though, and you've heard from us about this over the last several years, the state has codified definitions of environmental justice, overburdened community, and underserved community the Maryland Department of the Environment still does not have express authority to make permitting decisions based on environmental justice information, including the EJ score that it calculates for each census tract. So it has this information, but it then can't use it to make decisions. It can inform their actions. They have the information, but they can't base a permitting decision based on that information. So following the lead of states, including New Jersey, New York, and Minnesota, the Cherish Our Communities Act will reform Maryland's permitting system to better protect communities that already face heavy pollution burdens. The Cherish Act says that for certain permits under consideration in high EJ score areas, so it's not for all permits in all parts of the state, it's for specific permits in communities that have that EJ score of 75 or above. So it's in the top 25th percentile of most overburdened and underserved areas in the state, plus a 1 mile radius around that, because actually, because of displacement, because of some industries, some places where you would expect to actually have a high EJ score actually don't, because no people live there anymore because they've been pushed out. So to solve that problem, we looked at a high EJ score and surrounding census tracts or surrounding areas. But in those areas for those permits, an existing burden report would be produced, and based on the results of that existing burden report, so looking at what else is going on in a community before making a decision of what additional things should go in there, you do the analysis. And it would actually give MDE the authority to deny the permit based on that existing burden report. And in some cases, if the burden were exceedingly high, that you would actually, it's an automatic denial. That's in precedent. That's already in New York's law. So there's precedent for that. And that's what we're doing, is building building a permitting framework based on other what other states have done in the intervening years when we have not passed previously introduced bills. So the Cherish Act creates new permitting requirements for facilities that have the biggest impact on nearby communities, requires meaningful community engagement and public notice for all major pollution permits, ensures permits that would increase pollution in overburdened communities must include, so if the permit is going to be issued, it would include strong conditions to reduce pollution impacts and community benefits agreements to support local residents. And I think we're calling it Community Impact Mitigation Fund, actually, not a community benefit agreement. That's been a recent conversation. And the important part of the Cherish Act is that it was drafted primarily by community-based organizations and informed by community input, really driven by groups in South Baltimore, like the South Baltimore Community Land Trust, in coordination with groups in Western Maryland, Southern Prince George's, other parts of Baltimore, and the Eastern Shore. And we're excited to work with sponsors, Senator Clarence Lamb and Delegate Jazz Lewis. As many of you have heard me say on these webcasts in the past, my background is public health. So I really liken this approach to your conversations, a primary care checkup. What are you talking about? What's going on with me before we decide any specific course of action? That's what the existing burden report does. That's what this bill does, is make sure that the Maryland Department of the Environment just checks out what's going on before issuing additional permits, especially when communities are overburdened with pollution, similar to a person who might have pre-existing conditions. And so it's just a analogy, if that's helpful. So that's what I've got on the AACE Act and the Cherish Act. And I think, Jason, over to you to moderate some Q&A from our audience.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and thank you, Kristen. Before I get to some of the questions that we've been getting in, a couple of things I want to address. We've received several questions asking about visual elements to help support these bills. We do have our legislative priorities live on our website, which the link will be shared in the chat. There is a good visual component we will be building out as well throughout the course of the legislative session, but also more importantly, there are individual fact sheets available for these 4 bills. So we invite you to visit our website and navigate to that page, or click on the direct link that we will provide. We've also gotten several questions regarding bill numbers. Many of the bills do not have bill numbers yet, but we will make sure that these are put on the fact sheets and put on our legislative priorities webpage once they do become available. So if you have any more questions about that, certainly feel free to send them our way and we'll get to them. First question I would like to ask that came up is regarding the Cherish Act, is what qualifies ultimately as an overburdened community, and how will MDE determine what permits require additional review?
Yeah, thanks for that question. The overburdening communities is a legislatively set. So we passed in law through the Climate Solutions Now Act definitions of overburden and underserved. And so those are the definitions that the EJ score is based off of. That's in the bill. MDE based their EJ score, and mapping off of those definitions. Those definitions were community informed. Dr. Wilson and the team over at the University of Maryland School of Public Health and the Mid-Atlantic Justice Coalition helped shape those definitions, which got into the law. So that's all already in Maryland code is the definitions and the EJ scores that MDE has on their mapping tool, which is live and everybody can go check out based on those definitions. And then the bill itself actually spells out the specific facilities and permits that folks are concerned about. And that list, again, previous iterations of this bill have looked at a specific category of permits, a category of permits that requires additional public participation anyway. That's one of the fundamental differences between this bill and prior iterations of the bill is the authors didn't start from a category of permits that MDE already has. They actually, through conversations with community, identified facilities of most concerned and then matched those up with the types of permits they receive. And then that's the permit list that we see in legislation so that we can be more confident that the list of permits that this additional analysis would apply to are the facilities, are the permits of most concern to communities affected by pollution.
Rebecca, thank you. We've gotten two questions that are similar. I'm going to try to combine them into one, so forgive me if I miss one or two components, but it broadly asks about the governor this session. What is his policy agenda? What has he signaled as things that are important to him, and what can we expect for the next few months from him?
Yeah, Kristen, you want to take a?
Yeah,
I'll follow you.
Yeah, we do. So Governor Moore remains committed to working on environmental issues. We know he is also as with all the other policymakers in Annapolis, making some tough choices about the budget, and we'll be looking at that budget next year. But we do know that he is planning on introducing two bills, environmental bills. We haven't seen the text to either one of them, but we've had conversations enough to know that what's coming. One is a Chesapeake Bay bill that we're working with, that we are hoping will dovetail really nicely with the Nearshore Farm and Finance Act that we worked with, and that will be led by the Department of Natural Resources and the Department of Agriculture. So we're very excited to work on that one. And again, there are a lot of different pieces of it, and we know that there'll be a lot of different pieces of it, and we're very excited to see the bill language as it comes in so we can talk more in depth. And the other one we know that he's going to be introducing is that we don't have any details on, but we have heard that there will be a governor's energy package, a bill from the energy bill from the governor as well. Again, we're looking forward to seeing the details from that. But we know that from conversations as recently as yesterday and the day before that the governor is committed to working with us to make sure that we move the ball forward on environmental priorities this year.
Yeah, and I think I just put in the chat a post on X from the governor yesterday. Maryland's clean energy transition is an economic driver, and I remain committed to our bold climate and clean energy goals. With the General Assembly, we will reach 100% clean energy by 2035 by accelerating our clean energy development, lowering energy costs, and growing our economy. So I think that's a public statement we can point to, trying to get the signal from the governor's office about clean energy policies this session. Just like everybody else, our understanding is this session, budget, energy, and education are going to be three main topics of conversation. And I think energy in particular being up there. We've talked a lot about the AACE Act on this call so far, a governor's bill, and we've seen and gotten signals that there will be many more as well, including bills to focus on transmission and stabilizing the grid. There's going to be the Reclaim Renewable Energy Act that it does have a bill number, SB 10, so taking trash out of the RPS. So we can anticipate a number of energy bills that I think generally try to achieve the same outcome of addressing these increasing demands and increasing prices and protecting ratepayers. It's just we're going to have to take a look at the landscape of different policy approaches and see what starts moving.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, this is one of the things that we hope to be able to help all of you do is make sense of all of the bills that are coming in, because there are going to be a lot of energy bills, especially we know energy bills coming from a lot of different sources, trying to get to solve a lot of different problems, sometimes in similar ways, sometimes in different ways. And Rebecca and I and the rest of the policy team we'll be spending a lot of time looking at them and trying to make sense of them. So as you have questions, as you see things, stay tuned on this, watch this space, because we'll be talking about this more. Also, the Conservation Weekly, all our regular, any email updates we have on social media, the Friday Digest, our hot list that we send out to the legislators, which you can also see online. These are all the ways that we're trying to communicate with both you and the legislators about how to make sense of these priorities, these bills that are coming through from all different sectors, and to make sense of it, to make sure that we make progress this year.
Thank you both. I know we're running a little short on time, so I'm going to try to get to a few of these super quickly. I think these can both be answered pretty quickly, so I'll combine them. Could you fill us in the current status and proposed legislation and ongoing discussions concerning solar siting? And do we have any plan to weigh in on legislation related to the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project?
You thought those were going to be fast, Jason?
So there are as part of the whirlwind of bills around energy, there obviously solar and solar siting continues to be one of the big issues. We do expect that there will be bills that will try to get at the question of solar siting. We're still waiting for, again, like everything else, we're waiting for these bills to be introduced so we can take a look at them. And similarly, when going to the Piedmont Reliability Project, I mean, so Rebecca, I know you've put some thought into.
Yeah, I think we're gonna watch that space and see what legislation comes out. I know we've heard about several bills already. From Maryland LCV's perspective, our three questions about that, sort of our concerns about that project, fall into three categories. Community engagement, making sure that our communities being engaged, which has been our concern about generally when we talk about the CHERISH Act and other environmental justice initiatives. That's always been our number one priority is community engagement on projects. And so I think the same is true for the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project. Had there been community engagement, is a company coming in and being a good neighbor? Are they being transparent with the information of their plans, routes? So I think community engagement is a big category of our concern on that project. Benefits to Marylanders, we're still assessing. Does this project actually have any benefit to Marylanders? Or is it actually solely a cost to Marylanders? Are we bearing the brunt? Are we absorbing a cost of part of a project or part of a bigger energy demand system? And then Marylanders aren't actually seeing the benefit. And then the third is data centers. I mean, our understanding of the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project is to bring energy from a source in Pennsylvania to the rising energy demand from data centers in Northern Virginia. And so really, if it's to meet this rising energy demand from data centers, that continues to be another area of our focus, which is, how are we addressing increasing rise in demand and other environmental land use, water use concerns around data centers. So those are the questions we continue to ask, and that we'll continue to use as a lens as we review legislation related to the Piedmont liability.
Yeah, we're looking at and all these bills, and as we review all these bills, we're looking at benefits to Maryland's environment. We're looking to how we can use the environment to advance our economy, to build new jobs, to really support Maryland and its future.
We're up on time, but I have one quick question, 30 seconds or less. How can folks get involved, and what is the most effective way to make their voices heard?
Keep in touch with us. Get on our listserv. If you're not already, I assume you already are. We will keep you posted on when bills are about to happen, when bills or hearings are being heard, when to contact your legislators, and we'll provide you with guidance around messaging about what we think is the most effective messaging to get to legislators. So keep in touch, emailing, calling, any way that you have an opportunity to talk to your legislator about what is important to you. They need to hear from you. They respond to you. They work for you, and your voices and your stories are the most important things they can hear.
Good thing we had the same answer.
That's perfect. Kristen, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today. To everyone in the audience, thank you so much for being here. Sadly, that is all the time we do have today. But before you leave, we do have a Friday Digest every Friday this session. Our next one will be focused on the budget. We invite you to join next Friday and share any questions you have in advance or during the session. We're very excited to keep these things going. Please fill out the short 5-question survey. If you have ideas for topics or issues you would like us to discuss in the future, we will be reviewing those. Thank you all so much, and have a pleasant weekend ahead.